Welcome back, everybody. So I'm assuming that you have your tasting set up. Here, a nice white background paper, good lighting, a couple of glasses. Let's go ahead and taste through, step by step, the first two wines that you bought, the white wine and the red one. I'm going to go ahead and pour. Notice, by the way, that I have my wines bagged. Of course, I know what they are, but in another situation, I might not know what they are, and it's important that I don't know what they are at this point in time. Okay. Oh, my mouth is watering already. So let's just start with our systematic evaluation of each of these two wines. I want to mention something that's probably self-evident, but in this series of modules, we're breaking out the various steps of sensory evaluation. But when you actually are tasting a wine and not sitting down and formally taking notes, all of these various sensory segments really are overlapping. If you think about it, when you walk up to a glass of wine or somebody's pouring it for you, you're probably already smelling it. I can smell the glass from here. When you're having a look at the glass to visually evaluate it, you're already smelling it. When you go to smell it, you're still looking at it, aren't you? So vision and olfaction are overlapping. When you go ahead and taste it, you're smelling it still orthonasally and retronasally. So these sensory impressions kind of all run together. But what we'll do is we'll walk through these wines one at a time and step by step and look at each section separately. So the first thing we're going to do is our visual evaluation of the wine. And if you have a good bright light handy, you might actually lift the glass up with that light in the background, maybe even tip it at a 45-degree angle and see what you can see. And what you're looking for here is wine clarity. I can actually see some bubbles in this wine. That may or may not be important later on in the flavor by mouth, but in on my tasting notes, I'm going to write bubbly or gassy or CO2. Primarily, though, I'm looking at whether or not there's any sediment or any crystals in this wine. This wine looks actually very clear. In fact, I might, in my notes, say that it's brilliant. The next thing we're going to do is examine the color of this wine. And to do that, I'm actually going to bring the wine down and hold it at about a 45-degree angle with my white tablecloth or white paper background and have a look at the color. White wines, and I've given you some ideas about the range of colors. White wines range from very clear or almost a watery look to very pale straw. Some people prefer to say pale yellow. Pale straw, medium straw, light gold, and darker and darker. So that's the important thing, though, is to bring the glass down at a 45-degree angle so that you can actually see the light that's bouncing back through that liquid. The next thing we're going to do is our first quick sniff assessment of this wine. I'm going to give it a little bunny sniff or rabbit sniff, kind of like that, and I'm going to say to myself, yes, this wine is okay to proceed. This wine is sound and fresh. So let's go ahead and delve in and see what else is there. So I'm going to give it a little stronger swirl. From time to time, you'll see me even put my hand over the top of the glass to see if I can trap the maximum amount of aromatics, and then bring it up to my nose and sniff. Several sniffs, and now is the time that I'm going to be thinking about what are the specific aromatics that I'm finding in this wine. Am I finding floral aromatics? Am I finding fruitiness? If so, which kind of fruit? Citrus fruit, stone fruit, tropical fruit? You and I have different wines, of course, but so it won't necessarily be instructive to tell you what I'm finding in my wine, but this is the range of things that we want to look for in our wines. Are there any minerally notes? Does the wine smell like wet stones? Does the wine smell musty? Does the wine smell like vanilla or oak or wood shavings? Does the wine smell like butter? Does it smell like cupcake frosting? Does it smell like cookie dough? What are the various wood or buttery notes that might be in this wine? I'll just mention that in the case of the wine that I chose, it's a simple white wine. It's got a little bit of herbaceousness, a little bit of tropical fruit, and virtually no woodiness, no butteriness at all. The next thing we're going to do is take a little sip, and this is our first sip. And by the way, let me mention, if this is our first wine of the flight or our first wine of the day, we might want to actually take a little sip and rinse and spit. A lot of times, if our mouth is not accustomed to wine at that moment, we'll have a lingering flavor from something else, like our coffee or our tea, something that was in our mouth prior. Probably the worst thing that you can have in your mouth is the flavor of toothpaste if you've just brushed your teeth. So very often you'll see either tasters will taste a neutral wine at the very beginning before they concentrate on their flight, or in this case, I'll just take a quick sip, swish it around and spit it out. Now, my real first sip is going to be a little bit bigger sip, and I'm going to concentrate on the basic tastes. And you remember the basic tastes: sweetness, sourness, which refers to acidity, or bitterness, if any. So those are the thoughts that are running through my mind. There is no sweetness in this wine. If there were a slight amount of sweetness, I might say slightly sweet or off dry or sweeter. There is a fair amount of acidity in this wine, so I'll make notes about that. And there is no bitterness in this wine. This is a white wine, and white wines rarely have any bitterness, but you always want to look for it because sometimes bitterness can come from wood aging or from how the grapes were handled prior to fermentation. I'm going to take another sip now and really swish the wine around, maybe gargle it a little bit in my mouth, draw in some air, hopefully without choking. And I'm going to be thinking about aromatics again. I'm going to remember the things that I smelled when the wine was external. And while it's on my palate, I'm going to be thinking, do I smell the same things? Do I smell different things, additional things? So let's go ahead and do that. With pencil in hand, I'm going to be writing. Writing constantly. Anything that pops into my mind, anything that I'm smelling, orthonasally, retronasally, take notes. Don't forget to take notes as you go. The things that occurred to me when I tasted this wine was that the wine tasted much the same as it smelled, but a little bit simpler. In other words, instead of a lot of specific details, I got kind of an overall impression, net of how this wine had previously smelled, but now on my palate. Now I want to think about finish or persistence of taste. And I'll have to say that in my particular case, my wine finished very, very short. No sooner had I spit it out than several seconds later, the flavor on my palate is kind of a distant memory. So this wine had a short finish. There's nothing inherently good or bad about that. It's just the case of this particular wine. And it's important that I note that in my note-taking grid. I'm going to pause for a moment and then turn my attention to the red wine.